Most people think they know Ethiopia, but the Ethiopia they imagine barely exists. Because hidden behind the headlines is one of the oldest, most fascinating civilizations on Earth. A place where ancient kingdoms still echo through mountain valleys. Where churches are not built up, but carved down into solid volcanic rock. Where some of the world's most extreme landscapes exist side by side, with traditions that simply refuse to die. Where the calendar runs 7 years behind the rest of the world, and nobody here considers that a problem. Where a new day does not begin when the clock strikes midnight. It begins when the sun actually rises. Ethiopia, a country that refuses to conform. In Ethiopia, there are 13 months in a year. Scientists have found human fossils here more than 3 million years old, making this land the very cradle of our entire species. Christianity became Ethiopia's official religion in 330 AD, long before most of Europe adopted it. The only African country never fully colonized. A civilization that preserved its identity across thousands of years of pressure, invasion, drought, and change. A country where faith clings to cliffsides, where history is not confined to ruins, but is alive in the mountains, spoken through people who refuse to forget. Today, we are discovering the Ethiopia most people never see. Ethiopia begins in the highlands, and the highlands shaped everything: the climate, the agriculture, the civilization, the way people think about the world and their place in it. You cannot understand Ethiopia without first standing in these mountains and feeling how completely they define everything below them. The Simien Mountains, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, rise like a natural fortress above the clouds. Escarpments drop thousands of meters in sudden, breathtaking walls of rock. Mist frequently shrouds the peaks, moving with the mountain winds, causing the terrain ahead to simply vanish in seconds. Eroded over millions of years by wind and water and the slow grinding of geological time, these peaks form sharp, jagged steps where Ras Dashen, at over 4,550 meters, stands as the highest point in Ethiopia and one of the highest peaks on the entire African continent. On a clear day from the summit, the highlands stretch away in every direction as far as the eye can reach. A vast elevated world that has sheltered civilizations, preserved traditions, and kept invaders out for thousands of years. But what stops most visitors completely is not the landscape alone. It is what lives on it. The Galata monkey, known as the bleeding heart monkey due to the vivid red patch on its bare chest, lives here in large troops on the high grasslands. These are the only primates on Earth whose diet is almost entirely grass. By grazing while seated, rocking slowly forward with each mouthful, they maintain perfect stability on the very edge of cliffs that drop thousands of meters below them. A biological adaptation so precise it seems almost designed. Galatas have not just survived at altitude. They have made the altitude their home in a way no other primate has managed anywhere else on Earth. They live, feed, sleep, and raise their young on terrain that should, by any reasonable measure, be completely unsuitable for a social primate. In the same rocky realm, the Walia ibex, found nowhere else on the planet, navigates sheer cliff faces with hooves perfectly adapted for vertical rock. They can scale slopes of over 80 degrees without slipping, reaching ledges completely safe from every predator below. The mountain villages that cling to the lower slopes have been here for centuries, their stone houses and terrace fields carved into hillsides by communities who learned long ago that survival here requires both humility before the landscape and extraordinary ingenuity in the face of it. Shepherds move through the morning mist, following paths worn into the rock over generations. These mountains feel untouched, ancient, almost biblical in their scale and their silence. But hidden inside them lies one of humanity's greatest mysteries. Instead of building churches upward, they carved them downward, into solid rock. In the 12th century, King Lalibela made a vow that would become one of the most extraordinary architectural achievements in all of human history. He would build a new Jerusalem on African soil, accessible to all Ethiopian Christians, not in the sky, not on a mountaintop, but cut directly into the earth itself, at nearly 2,800 meters above sea level in the dry, rocky highlands of northern Ethiopia. Lalibela, 11 churches, not assembled from stone blocks carried to a site, but carved directly out of a single mass of volcanic rock, each one excavated downward and inward, leaving the surrounding stone intact while removing everything that was not the church. According to historical records, these 11 churches were completed not over centuries, but in just 24 years. More than 40,000 builders using only basic tools, picks, levers, small axes, dug structures up to 50 meters deep into solid rock. The scale of this, when you stand beside one of these churches and try to comprehend what was removed by hand to leave this perfect structure behind, is almost impossible to fully process. The most iconic is St. George's Church, Bete Georgis, shaped like a perfect Greek cross when viewed from above. Its roof decorated with an interlocking grid of crosses descending 12 meters into the earth. There are not many written records about exactly how it was built, but the local people have always believed that angels came at night and continued the work the builders left unfinished each evening. When you stand at the rim of the excavation and look down at the perfect geometric precision carved below you, illuminated by sunlight entering only from directly above, it is not difficult to understand why that belief has never faded. These are not ruins, they are alive. White-robed pilgrims descend the carved stone tunnels every single day, pressing their foreheads against ancient walls worn smooth by millions of hands before them. Priests in colorful vestments carry ornate ceremonial crosses through candlelit corridors that have seen continuous worship for 8 centuries. During the great festivals, particularly Ethiopian Christmas and Timkat, the celebration of baptism, thousands of pilgrims flood into Lalibela from across the country, some walking for days to arrive, filling every passage and courtyard with prayer and incense and the sound of ancient liturgical chant that has remained essentially unchanged since these churches first opened. Ethiopia's faith is ancient. The liturgies, the devotion, the physical connection to sacred rock that has absorbed centuries of prayer. But its history is even older, and it stretches back to a kingdom that once challenged the greatest empires on earth. Long before the churches of Europe or the colonial cities of Africa, there was Axum, a kingdom that recorded its power not on parchment, but on stone tablets weighing hundreds of tons. Located in northern Ethiopia, Axum was the capital of the Aksumite Empire, dominant from the 1st to the 7th centuries AD. At its height, it ranked alongside Rome, Persia, and China as one of the 4 great civilizations of the ancient world. Axum controlled the trade routes across the Red Sea, linking the Roman Empire with India, commanding the movement of ivory, gold, incense, and precious goods across one of the most strategically critical waterways in the ancient world. It was the first sub-Saharan African kingdom to embrace Christianity, around 350 AD, decades before most of Europe had made that transition. The most striking evidence of Axum's technological sophistication lies in its obelisks, massive stelae carved from single blocks of granite and raised without mortar, without cranes, without any of the machinery we would consider necessary for objects of this scale. Some stand over 24 meters high and weigh more than 500 tons. They are decorated with false doors and windows carved in precise detail, representations of the multi-story palaces of the ancient city. How they were quarried, transported over distance, and raised into vertical position remains one of the great unsolved engineering mysteries of the ancient world. And then there is the mystery that overshadows everything else in Axum. According to Ethiopian Orthodox tradition, the Ark of the Covenant, the sacred chest said to contain the original 10 Commandments given to Moses, was brought to Axum by Menelik I, son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. It is said to rest today in a small chapel beside the Church of Our Lady of Zion, guarded by a single monk who has dedicated his entire life to its protection. No one else is permitted inside. Not other priests, not government officials, not archaeologists. The guardian monk lives in isolation beside the chapel until his death, at which point another monk is chosen to take his place. The Ark, if it exists here, has not been seen by outside eyes in living memory. Walking through Axum today, among fallen obelisks and ancient ruins and churches built on the foundations of temples thousands of years older, the truth feels close enough to touch. This feels less like Earth, and more like another planet. Just behind the highlands, the road descends into what scientists call one of the most hostile environments humans have ever inhabited. The Danakil Depression, where 3 tectonic plates are pulling the Earth apart at a rate of 2 centimeters per year. A landscape formed not by erosion, but by tearing. The basin sits 125 meters below sea level. Temperatures average 35 degrees Celsius year-round and frequently soar above 50. The air is saturated with hydrogen sulfide, the pungent smell of rotten eggs that assaults the lungs with every breath. The water here is so acidic it can dissolve metal. Yet life persists. Scientists have identified microorganisms here with cellular structures resembling life forms that could potentially exist on Mars or Venus. The surface is never still. Boiling water evaporates rapidly, creating new hydrothermal vents while others vanish within days. Pools of neon yellow, toxic green, and burnt orange form across the terrain, like a chemical hallucination painted directly onto the salt desert. No trails, no shade. just the constant hiss of gas vents and the trembling of magma somewhere beneath your feet. At the center of the Danakil lies Dalol, the most surreal landscape on Earth. Thermal springs push mineral-rich water upward through the salt crust, and as it hits the surface air, it crystallizes instantly into formations of yellow sulfur, orange iron oxide, and white salt that look like nothing that should exist in nature. The colors are so saturated they seem artificial. The structures so strange they seem deliberately sculpted. But they are entirely geological, produced by chemistry, heat, and constant underground violence that never stops. And then there is Erta Ale, one of only 5 volcanoes in the world with a permanent lava lake. The molten surface churns continuously at temperatures reaching over 1,000 degrees. To reach it requires crossing the salt desert at night, the only time temperatures are survivable, walking for hours through darkness broken only by the red-orange glow growing on the horizon ahead. When you finally stand at the crater rim and look down at the roiling lava lake below, the heat rising in waves that distort your vision, the sound of magma moving beneath the surface, you understand forces that built this planet in a way no book can convey. And crossing this same desert are the camel caravans. More than 700 workers battle the heat every day in the Danakil, cutting salt into rectangular blocks and loading them onto camels for the long journey to trading posts. The caravans sometimes stretch more than a kilometer across the white salt flats, each animal carrying 20 to 30 kilograms. The caravan leader keeps pace with footsteps and short whispered commands. No trees, no shade, no stops. The caravan simply continues until it reaches its destination. Life here has built an entire economy and culture in conditions the rest of the world would consider completely uninhabitable. Coffee began here, not in Italy, not in France, not in the coffee houses of Vienna or the espresso bars of Rome. Here, in the highlands of southwestern Ethiopia, in a region called Kaffa, whose very name is almost certainly the origin of the word coffee itself. Long before coffee culture, espresso machines, and global coffee chains existed, the world's most consumed morning ritual was born in this specific landscape, from this specific plant, in this specific country. The legend goes like this. A goat herder named Kaldi noticed his goats becoming unusually energetic after eating berries from a particular wild shrub growing on the hillside. They would not sleep at night. He brought the berries to a local monastery. The monks, suspicious at first, reportedly threw them into a fire. But the roasting produced an aroma so extraordinary they retrieved them, dissolved the roasted beans in hot water, and discovered the drink kept them alert through long hours of evening prayer. The shrub was Coffea arabica, and from this highland plateau, its seeds traveled across the Red Sea, to Yemen, then to the Ottoman Empire, then to Europe, then to every corner of the earth. In Ethiopia today, the coffee ceremony is not a nostalgic tradition preserved for tourists. It is a living ritual performed in homes across the country every single day, multiple times a day, for family, for neighbors, for guests. Green coffee beans are washed and roasted over an open fire, stirred constantly until they reach the perfect dark color. The aroma fills the room and spills into the street. The beans are then ground by hand and brewed slowly in a clay pot called a yabina and served in small handleless cups. The ceremony always involves 3 rounds: abul, tona, and baraka. The first, the second, and the blessing. Incense burns throughout, the smoke mixing with coffee aroma into something more than a smell. An atmosphere, a state of being. Coffee here is not a drink. It is a ritual, a connection between people that has remained essentially unchanged for centuries, while the rest of the world built entire industries around the bean that Ethiopia quietly gave to the world. Ancient traditions still shape modern Ethiopia in ways impossible to miss and impossible to fully prepare for. In the Omo Valley, a plateau that sinks into vast plains stretching toward the Kenya-Sudan border, some of the most distinctive cultures on Earth continue to live according to rhythms that have nothing to do with the outside world. Life here is dictated by climate, not time, by the river, not the calendar. The Hamar are almost entirely dependent on cattle and honey. Their homes arranged in protective circles where cattle are kept inside at night. Not only for safety, but because cattle represent status, wealth, and survival all at once. Women express their identity on their bodies with extraordinary precision. Hair coated in ochre and butter, braided into thick locks that glisten red in the sun. Copper bracelets, beaded necklaces, metal collars that communicate marital status and social standing in an instant. Everything modern societies communicate through paperwork is communicated here through ornamentation, through the body itself. The bull jumping ceremony marks the transition from boyhood to manhood. A young man must run across the backs of a line of cattle without falling, in front of the entire community. Before the ceremony, women of the family voluntarily submit to whipping as a declaration of devotion and resilience, bearing the marks on their backs as a source of pride that will last for years. In the lower Omo Valley, the Karo people, fewer than 3,000 members, transform their bodies into living art every single day. Hours before sunrise, they begin decorating themselves with white chalk, ochre, and charcoal. Each stroke has a purpose. Nothing is purely decorative. Body paint here is not an accessory. It is a language, a complete system of communication that conveys status, spiritual state, and identity more completely than words could. And the Dasanak people transform discarded bottle caps, broken watch straps, and plastic fragments into headdresses and jewelry of extraordinary precision. What the modern world considers trash becomes here a statement of identity and belonging. The past is never far away in Ethiopia, but neither is the creativity to make something entirely new from whatever the world provides. Most visitors never expect this side of Ethiopia. At 2,355 meters above sea level, Addis Ababa is the third highest capital city on Earth. And from a distance, its skyline rises into thin air with a confidence that surprises almost everyone who arrives expecting something smaller, something slower. Soviet-era Lada taxis run alongside newly imported SUVs, construction cranes rise above corrugated iron workshops. Glass towers stand beside century-old eucalyptus trees. This is not contradiction. It is simply two time periods coexisting in the same space, moving at different speeds, building the same future from very different starting points. Addis Ababa sits where two Ethiopian climate zones converge, making this one of the few cities on Earth where walking downhill can literally change the weather around you. At the heart of the capital is the Mercado, one of the largest open-air markets in all of Africa. Here you can buy almost anything that exists in Ethiopia, from hand-woven textiles and traditional coffee sets to mobile phones and electronics. From fresh spices sold by the handful to livestock navigating the same narrow paths as delivery trucks. The Mercado follows a logic that reveals itself slowly to anyone patient enough to walk through without a destination. Organized not by grid or signage, but by relationship and knowledge built over decades. The African Union headquarters stands in Addis Ababa, making this city the diplomatic capital of the entire African continent. Universities are expanding rapidly. A new light rail system connects neighborhoods previously isolated. Young Ethiopians who grew up abroad are returning with capital, ideas, and ambition. The construction happening in every direction is not just physical, it is a declaration. Ethiopia is building its future here, right now, visibly, urgently, with the energy of a country that knows exactly where it has come from and is determined about where it is going. Ethiopia runs on its own calendar, 13 months in a year, currently 7 years behind Western time. And in Addis Ababa, you feel this most clearly. A city simultaneously ancient and brand new, operating by its own logic, on its own timeline, building something that has no exact parallel anywhere else on Earth. Ethiopia has always followed its own path, never fully colonized, never fully absorbed into someone else's story, always distinct. And this uniqueness is not just a historical fact. It is something you can feel everywhere you go in this country. The 1896 Battle of Adwa, where Ethiopian forces defeated a fully equipped Italian colonial army, sent a message to the entire world that reverberated for decades. Ethiopia was the proof that African civilization could defend itself, could defeat European military power on open terrain, could remain sovereign when every surrounding country was being carved up and claimed. That victory lives in the national identity the way great battles live in countries whose entire sense of self was shaped by a single defining moment. The Orthodox Christian tradition, unbroken since the 4th century, gives Ethiopian life a spiritual architecture unlike anything else in the Christian world. Ancient liturgies sung in gaze, a liturgical language not spoken as a mother tongue, for over 1,000 years, but still used in worship every week. The hospitality that every visitor encounters is not performance. It is genuine, rooted in a cultural value that treats a guest as a blessing rather than a transaction. Coffee shared with a stranger. A meal offered without calculation. A conversation that continues far longer than it needs to, because the connection itself is the point. Ethiopia has always been this way. The mountains, the faith, the identity and the welcome have remained constant through every change and every generation that has come and gone across these ancient highlands. Ethiopia is not one story. It is many stories layered together, ancient and modern, spiritual and ambitious, harsh and beautiful. The world often overlooks Ethiopia. But those who come here discover something that genuinely changes them. Not just a country, but one of humanity's oldest living civilizations, still breathing, still growing, still absolutely and completely itself. The Simien Mountains still rise above the clouds. The churches of Lalibela still receive their pilgrims every morning. The Danakil still burns under an unforgiving sun. The coffee ceremony still fills homes with incense and quiet conversation. Addis Ababa still builds its skyline higher every single year. Axum still guards its secrets. The Omo Valley still lives by its own ancient rhythms. And Ethiopia still refuses to conform to anyone's expectations of what it should be, or what it should look like, or what it is allowed to become. You arrive here expecting a destination. You leave carrying something much harder to explain. A sense that you have touched something real, something very old, something the modern world has been moving away from for so long that most people have forgotten it even exists. Ethiopia brings you back to the beginning, to the highlands where our entire species first stood upright and looked at the horizon and decided to walk toward it. The journey ends here, but Ethiopia stays with you.